This is part 2 of Word Chapter 2. This is about paragraph formatting. The most common kind of paragraph formatting is text alignment. So I'm going to click here in this first paragraph, and it is left justified, which means all of the text is lined up on the left-hand margin. Often you'll want to do full justification, which lines up the text on both margins by inserting extra space between the words so that both margins are lined up. You can also right justify and center your paragraph, but often it's going to be left justified. If you want to create a list, that's where we use the bulleted and numbered lists. So a bulleted list just has bullets in front of it. And when you're finished with your bulleted list, you can just press enter twice and that will start a new paragraph without a bullet. Same thing with a numbered list. Now let me start that apart from that. There we go. And when you're done, you can just press enter twice and you'll be done with that list. You can also do more complicated lists, which we'll talk about in a later chapter associated with outlining, where you can have a 1 followed by an A, followed by an I, followed by a 1 with 2 parentheses, etc. And all different kinds of outlining or different levels of bullets that you can use. And you can customize these, and here's the Roman numeral followed by a Roman letter followed by a number followed by a lowercase. You can use all of these. If you want to do chapters and headings within a chapter, this is the kind of list that you would choose. Now let's talk about tabs. Your normal kind of tab, and I'm going to turn on the show hide so you can see the tabs that I type. So let me type some text. And then if I want the next thing that I create, I'm going to click here on my ruler at 1.5 inches, and I'll press the tab key, and then I'm at 1.5 inches. If I create a new paragraph, the tabs that I created in this paragraph will be inherited by the next paragraph. And that's going to be true of any paragraph formatting. When you create a new paragraph, it inherits the paragraph formatting of the paragraph from which it was created. Now I can see here that I'm going to have a left tab because I've got sort of an L-shaped tab character. If I click once on that, then I get an upside down T, and that's going to be a center tab. So I'm going to come here at 3 inches and I will create a center tab. Let me do it in this paragraph. Now when I go there, this is going to be centered around this tab. And when I click on the tab, I'll see exactly where it falls on the line. Click one more time and I'll have a backwards L. That's a right tab. Whatever I type at that point is going to be right justified. And then when I type a space, I'm still right justified. If I want to do something beyond that, then I can create a different tab. Now I have different tabs here. Let me cycle back around. This is a decimal tab. You'll see it's an upside down T with a dot. The reason for that is for lining up numbers. You'll see the decimal points line up in all of these. There's also a bar tab. That's not a pun. That does the same thing as a decimal tab, except it lines you up according to the bar symbol. I don't use that very often. So I don't think you'll be using the bar tabs or any of those kinds of other tabs that are in here very often. Just the left, the center, the right, and the decimal tab. Now let's talk about paragraph indenting. And I'm going to use the ruler to show you how to do this. There are 3 parts here to the left margin on the ruler to work with paragraphs. This top trapezoid controls the first line indent. So it controls where the first line for each paragraph starts. You should be using the first line indent instead of using a tab character at the beginning of the paragraph. I will take off for tab characters at the beginning of a paragraph. The advantage of doing it this way is then if you select more than one paragraph, you can adjust that first line indent for all of them. The second trapezoid moves the rest of the lines, and when you grab this bottom rectangle, that moves both the first line indent and the rest of the lines indent all together. You can create a hanging indent if you pull the first line indent outside of the rest of the lines. This is generally used for these kinds of bulleted lists. If I were to continue with this and just type some random stuff here, you'll see that this is a hanging indent where the beginning line sticks out over the first, but then the text is lined up and only the bullet sticks out into the margin. If you need to indent a paragraph because it is a quote, then you're not only going to want to indent the left side, but you're also going to want to indent the right side, and here you have the little trapezoid that allows you to indent the right-hand side, and you'll indent it however much the style that you are using for your paper calls for. If I want to do more sophisticated things with my paragraphs, and let me go down here to a normal paragraph, you'll notice that up here on the ribbon you have a button that allows you to call out the standard dialog box, and you can control the alignment, you can control whether or not this is a part of an outline, you can control the left and right indentation, first line indent, hanging indent. You can have it so that if you indent the left side a certain amount, then the right side will also be indented the same amount. Paragraph spacing. This is something that's new in Word 2010. By default, Word puts 10 points of space between paragraphs. Your English teacher may not like all of that extra space, and so if you want to get rid of that, you'll have to come to this paragraph dialog and dial this down to 0. This is also where you control the line spacing. If you want to double space, you'll pick double space. Again, most professors are not going to like the 1.15 space in between these paragraphs. And of course, I'm going to put a first line indent here because if you don't have any kind of indentation or any extra space between your paragraphs, then the paragraphs don't stand out from each other. In general, white space is a good thing. It helps you read the document better, but you do need special indications of where paragraphs begin and end. Let me return to this paragraph dialog box and talk about line and page breaks. Widow and orphan control. A widow is a line by itself that's the last line of the paragraph that's stuck on the next page. An orphan is the beginning of a paragraph that's stuck at the bottom of a page by itself. By having this checked, which is checked by default, you ensure that there's at least 2 lines at the top of a page, or that a new paragraph, a new page will start if you have an orphan. Keep with next says that this paragraph needs to go with the next paragraph. That's generally only applicable if you have a heading style. You don't want a heading down at the bottom of the page by itself. We can have borders around our paragraph. Let me go back to my quote paragraph here, and I've got this border that allows me to put a border around the paragraph. If I were to select more than one paragraph, and I put all borders, then I get a line in between the paragraphs. Generally, you're not going to want to do that. If you're doing something like this, you're just going to want a border around the whole thing to sort of call it out. You can also put shading behind it by choosing the shading. You can put different colors behind it, assuming that you have the capability of printing in color. Again, that's another way of making something stand out. Also take note of the non-breaking hyphens and spaces. If I don't want a line to break in between these words, I can do Control Spacebar, and it will insert a non-breaking space in between those words that says do not break the line between these words. That'll do it for the second lesson. In the third lesson, I'm going to cover a little bit more about page formatting and about images.